Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event. Today, we are celebrating the release of Dungeoneer Adventures #1, Lost in the Mushroom Maze, with the authors Ben Costa and James Parks, who I will introduce more shortly. My name is Jenny. I'm one of the co-owners of Mysterious Galaxy, and I will be sort of your very brief tour guide for the evening. What you need to know as audience members is, first, right below me, you will see a button that says books, book plates, and that is where you go to support these wonderful authors and to support Mysterious Galaxy by purchasing a copy of Dungeoneer Adventures. And when you do that, you will also get a signed book plate from the authors, which is also amazing. So please do that. The other thing to know is to your right, you will see the chat. Feel free to kind of share any comments or love for our authors there. But if you have a question, which please do share all questions, the other button you'll find below us is the Ask a Question button, and you will go in there, and that is where you can type in a question for our authors, which they will answer closer to the end of the event. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben and James. Ben Costa and James Parks are authors living in San Francisco Bay Area. They have been friends since the second grade. I don't know if I know anyone now that I've known since the second grade. But in addition to Dungeoneer Adventures, the two are the creators of the graphic novel series Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo, for which Ben is the artist, as well as the tabletop role-playing game Land of Eem. All right. Ben and James, congratulations again on the release of the book, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, like she said, we've been friends since the second grade, and we've always loved making things together. We used to make comics with crayons and whatnot, like little Spider-Man comics starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Shaquille O'Neal and Spider-Man saving the city of New York in 1992 or whenever it was.
Yes. And we put out a graphic novel trilogy last few years called Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo. And now we're here with Dungeoneer Adventures, our debut middle grade series.
Yeah, and should we talk a little bit about Dungeoneer?
Yeah.
So Dungeoneer Adventures is the story of a kid named Coop Cooperson, who is the only human kid that attends a school for adventurers in the Land of Eem called Dungeoneer Academy. And Coop and his pals are doing their best to pass the final gauntlet test at Dungeoneer Academy, because if they don't pass, they're actually going to get expelled. And so Coop, along with his, I don't know if you can see this behind me. Can you see that behind me? There it is. Costa to the rescue. You got Coop front and center. I still need you to share it.
Is this backwards?
It's not backwards for me.
Okay. It just shows it as backwards for me. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. So front and center there with the torch, you've got Coop Cooperson in the blue. And then behind him is Augie Twinklebark in the orange, his best friend. Mindy the Imp in the purple sweater. And Daz the Boggart in the green. And together they work to adventure and play throughout the Land of Eem. Not only facing off against the forces of evil, but also trying to navigate the complexities of going to middle school, which Ben and I have a long history of because we went to middle school together. And so we pulled a lot of our own experiences directly from that and put it into the book to make it a fun read that's both filled with a little bit of school drama and a little bit of high adventure.
Yeah, and we were really inspired by years of playing tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. So kind of wanted to imagine what it would be like if there was a school for kind of, dungeon crawlers and explorers that taught kids how to become adventurers. So that's kind of like the genesis of the whole thing.
Yeah.
James and I mean, that's really how we started telling stories together is through playing RPGs, creating tons of characters and world building. So this was a logical next step.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a lot of fun when you're playing a tabletop role-playing game. It's fun because you're doing collaborative storytelling, but to actually turn it into a career like we have, it's been fantastic. It's like a dream come true.
Yeah, should we talk a bit about like our process?
Yeah, why not? So Ben and I have been collaborating together for a long time, and so we've got kind of our own methodology of working through books and news stories and games and all the other stuff we work on. The first part of our process, though, is something we call the Great Riff, where Ben and I will actually sit across from each other and tell a story back and forth to each other, create characters, tell stories, create conflicts, and just kind of throw things at the wall until we firm up ideas that we want to put into an outline. And when we are outlining a story, we actually do it in two different stages. The first stage is just like something loose. We come up with ideas, we loosely structure the narrative together, and just get into a Google Doc together and just plug away until we've got, okay, here's a bunch of words that are thrown against the wall, but have created a story we feel is compelling, or something that we think would be a great read. Then once we've done that, we actually go in and we take each scene beat by beat and write it all down. We just write the whole thing down and break it up into chapters, because we write together, we actually switch off on the chapters. And that can be a challenge without a really structured outline.
Yeah. And for Dungeoneer Adventures, since it's a highly illustrated book, there's a lot of drawings. Within the book, the chapters that we're writing will kind of block out what images we want to appear. And a lot of it is comics. And so once we get to the illustration step, it was kind of a tricky process, because this is our first middle grade book. Normally I'm used to drawing comic books that are all laid out panel by panel, and James and I can plan that really easily. But because you can't really foresee exactly how the text is going to lay out on a page, you really have to get everything laid out first in the text and then place all the pictures. So there was a lot of it's like fitting a puzzle, like all these little pieces. If you move one part of the puzzle, the other part gets messed up, and so there's like a whole chain reaction of things that happens. So that was actually the most difficult part of making this book, but I think for the next one we're gonna have it a bit more streamlined. But as you can see, from page to page you have illustrations. And
one of the reasons why that's so important with a book like Dungeoneer Adventures is that because there's so many comics and illustrations that also include text or include visual storytelling, if it's out of order or not just in the right place, it makes it hard to understand the actual story.
Yeah, for instance, this leads right into some dialogue in a comic. So if this were to just be one line off, then it just wouldn't make sense. So
Right.
That was like a lot of the problems you run into. Yeah, that's the process.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is the process. And then months of Ben painstakingly doing beautiful art that's fun and expressive. Of course, that's like the last piece before the layout. But why don't we share some of Dungeoneer Adventures? Why don't we read the first chapter?
Sure. So James is going to read the first part. I'll kind of show the pictures as he goes, and then we'll switch off.
And then we'll switch off. I'll read the first half of chapter 1. It's brief, but lots happens. Okay. Chapter 1. That's it. I'm dead meat. I know. The story literally just started, but I am toast. In fact, we all are. Need proof? Check out the gnarly creature chasing me and my friends. That thing's called a ramgor, extremely grumpy. And do you see those horns? Trust me, you don't want to be on the business end of those horns. That's me, Coop, front and center. Coop Cooperson. Yes, that really is my name. And if you didn't already know, you're reading my adventures. I keep a journal of everything that happens to me, mainly because I'm the only human kid ever at Dungeoneer Academy. My best friend, Augie, he draws all the pictures. That's him on the right, the tall bugbear, eyes wide and panting hard. He's basically like the best artist in the whole school. Next to Augie is Mindy. She's an imp. And right now, she's struggling to keep up because of that giant backpack of hers. Weighs her down like an anchor. Who wears a backpack that huge filled with that much random stuff? Mindy, that's who. She says it's because a Dungeoneer needs to be prepared for anything, which is true. But one thing I've learned over and over in my short time here at Dungeoneer Academy, you also need to be prepared to run for your life. Luckily, Daz is there to give Mindy a hand as we leap for the slimy rock wall in front of us. Daz is a boggart and easily the most awesome of our team. She's smart, fast, skilled, and, well, kind of cute. Wait a minute, I can't be thinking about cute girls at a time like this. Get your head in the game, Coop. Your future at Dungeoneer Academy is riding on this. All of our futures are. I clamber up the slimy surface of the wall and almost slip to my doom. But my hands find a firm grip, and I barely pull myself up out of harm's way as the ramgor slams its mighty horns into the wall with a thud. Whew, that was close. But there's no time to rest. We run full speed ahead into the next hallway, and out of nowhere, this green, stinky gas pours from a vent in the stone walls. Ick, it's a gas trap. It smells like an ogre ate a trash salad sandwich and burped in my face. We've got to keep moving. Wait, Mindy yells. Click. Stop, we need to be careful here. Cough, cough. This hall must be riddled with booby traps. Let me just examine. I accidentally step on a pressure plate. Something sharp and pointy whizzes by my head. Fweet, fweet, fweet. Arrow trap, there's no time to run. Click, whiz, whoosh. We dash forward, not even watching where we step. Gouts of flame blast from jets in the floor and ceiling. We weave through them, and the fire is so hot it burns my nostrils. All of a sudden, a pendulum blade swings toward us from the darkness above. Duck, yells Augie. We dive out of the way. Well, everyone except Mindy. She hits the floor, and her humongous backpack tumbles onto her head. The pendulum narrowly misses slicing her in two. Mindy, I scream. I'm fine, she says, muffled under her backpack. Whoosh, go on without me.
The pendulum sways back and forth above her like an old tire swing. Well, an old razor-sharp murderous tire swing. Just stay down, I reply. She'll be fine if she doesn't move, but we've got to press on. Time is against us. We charge forward, and next thing I know, Augie sticks out his big furry arm to stop me from plunging down into a pit. Whoa, thanks, pal, I say. Don't mention it, says Augie. He sighs. I hate this part. Just follow my lead. I take a step back and jump to the first platform in front of us. Daz leaps right behind me as I leap to the second platform, and Augie follows her. Now, I should probably explain something about Augie. Augie is super strong, and like I said before, he's a great artist. Oh, and of course he's the best friend anyone could ever ask for. But Augie, well, he's kind of clumsy. He says he's still growing into his body, and sometimes his big old feet can't keep up with his brain. And that's exactly what happens as he leaps from one platform to the next. Augie's feet go all wonky, and he spins out of control like a dizzy ballerina. Bam! Augie accidentally bumps into Daz, and she loses her footing too. I turn around, but there's nothing I can do. They both go tumbling into the murky water below with a splash. Augie! Daz yells as her head bobs up from the water. She's clearly frustrated. Sorry, Daz. Augie is soaking wet and looks about 100 pounds thinner. Whatever, she mutters under her breath. She turns to my direction as I bound to the other side of the chasm. Keep going, Coop. You're almost there. And then it's all up to me. But just when I think there's time to take a breath and get my bearings, I hear the sound of grinding stone so loud that it rattles my bones. I glance behind me and see a giant boulder rolling down a ramp from above. My legs feel like jelly, but if I don't move now, I'll be pancake batter. The boulder slams on the ground where I was just standing a second earlier, and the whole dungeon shakes like an earthquake. Small rocks pelt me from the ceiling, and I can't help but scream. I dart through the dark tunnel as the boulder barrels behind me just a few feet away. Then I see it. The glowing pink gem. It's sitting on a golden pedestal at the other end of a pit. By the look of things, I'll need to swing on a ropey vine hanging from the ceiling to get to the other side of the pit. I don't have a moment to think. But right before I jump, I make the dumb decision to look down. Staring back at me from the darkness below is a giant spider. I stop in my tracks. My knees start shaking. I can see its ooey gooey mandibles glistening in the dark. Did I mention I hate spiders? Like, really hate them? So this is where I actually die. I know I said I was toast earlier, but I really think I'm going to have to end it here, folks. I never should have enrolled in Dungeoneer Academy. No junior Dungeoneer badge is worth this. I mean, I certainly didn't expect that I would die in my first semester. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this stuff. Majorly hairy legs, probably corrosive saliva, a billion eyes. Okay, 4 eyes, but still. As I contemplate my mortality, I hear the faint voices of my friends echoing through the dungeon. Come on, Coop, you can do it, they say. You're our last chance. And suddenly I'm filled with a little bit of hope. At least enough to leap out of the way of the rolling boulder before it flattens me. Slam! Only trouble is, I didn't have a running start. I barely grab hold of the vine and cling for dear life, but without any momentum, I can't swing to the other side. Come on, I wiggle on the vine like a worm on a hook. I'll never get the gem now. Falling into a dark pit is bad enough, but worse than that, I'm about to be spider food. The giant spider's fangs foam and froth as it inches towards me. My sweaty hands slip, and I slide down the vine. That is the end of chapter 1.
Ben, who's your favorite character in Dungeoneer Adventures?
I'm so glad you asked, James.
Hilarious.
Aside from Coop, Coop's the easy answer because, we're writing from his point of view. It's a first-person book. It's easy just to identify with him. Other than Coop, I do really enjoy writing for Augie because he's the silly one, and we can always have him make a wisecrack or say something silly that's kind of gullible or just not with it. It's like his head isn't in the moment.
Yeah. Augie's head not being in the moment is a great way to cut tension when like stuff gets really complicated between characters and Augie's like only half there, and he reminds us all why they were friends in the first place.
Yeah, he's definitely the comedic element. Although they can all be funny. What about you? Who's your favorite? I mean,
that's a tough question for me. I've yet to be able to firm up exactly who my favorite character is. Although I like because I love the Augie Coop stuff. I love the Coop dad stuff. But I think that Mindy makes me laugh because she puts so much effort into everything that she does. She's always planning. She's always studying the hardest. She's always pushing the others the hardest. And at the same time, she's got that kind of like, I'm a know-it-all, like a, well, actually, to all the teachers, which always makes me laugh. And she's such a great character to pull out like a random piece of lore that is helpful to the characters in a pinch, but also to be used as like a foreshadowing for something that might come up later. It's fun to have her overthink things sometimes.
Yeah. I agree.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go
ahead. This is the part of the stream where Ben and I talk over each other for 4 minutes. No. Talk about what went into creating the first sequence in Dungeoneer Adventures and why we did some of those creative choices.
The first sequence. Well, we wanted to start it off with the bang and kind of have the kids in a dangerous situation where you think that it's kind of a wild, uncontrolled situation, but then it turns out to be, be that they're
something different.
Right. There's a little bit of a twist. They're not actually going to die. This is not the end of their lives. They're in a training situation, preparing for the final gauntlet. So that was kind of like the big reason we just wanted action. We wanted to throw the reader into the story because this is really an action adventure story. I mean, it does have a lot of school elements, where they're kind of navigating, like we said, like middle school drama and like learning how to do well in school, making sure they're passing their classes. But I would say half the book is just action.
Yeah, action adventure that's creates a lot of problems for them, that it's compounded by their day-to-day lives and each of their individual story arcs, that they're the challenges and conflicts that they're facing, not as a team. So cool.
And thematically, I mean, to touch on like the team aspect, we wanted to show that they weren't working together in the beginning. And so they kind of have to learn how to do that throughout the book.
Yeah, being a Dungeoneer in the Land of Eem is all about proper teamwork, really working together for one goal, and each individual in the party, each individual person bringing their strengths to the table that are different from each other, so that they can form a cohesive team. And that's a lot of teamwork, a lot of coming together with different skills and talents is a major theme throughout the book, and will continue to be throughout the series.
What would you say was the most difficult part of the book to write?
Ooh, that's a good question. What was the most difficult part of the book to write? I think one of the I think for me, without giving away any spoilers, the kids need to complete the final gauntlet in order to advance at Dungeoneer Adventures or Dungeoneer Academy and get their junior Dungeoneer badge, which allows them to go from a recruit to a full junior Dungeoneer and continue their training and schooling. The final gauntlet is the test, and this year's test is being held in a place called the Fungal Jungle. And the way that they get to the Fungal Jungle is by taking a sputter train, which is kind of like a clockwork steam-powered train that is underground and takes the kids from Dungeoneer Academy all the way to the Fungal Jungle, where they'll have their right there. And before we had, and this goes into a little bit of world building, before we had cohesively understood what the world was really going to function like, what the physics were like, what the Land of Eem was really about, especially underground, like Dungeoneer Adventures takes place in, I didn't have a good sense of how we would approach the team, like leaving the school environment and going to other places. And so the field trip seemed obvious, but actually executing a field trip in a in a fantasy setting where there's monsters and jungles and mazes and all that stuff was a bit of a challenge for me to wrap my head around. But once we got there, everything seemed to fall into place, and lots of different opportunities to integrate not only school stuff but high adventure and the unknown.
Yeah.
What did you have the most fun doing, Ben?
It's tough to say. I love both writing and drawing. I think there's a big satisfaction from drawing a picture and having it come together and seeing it laid out on the page and like seeing how it flows well. But I do love the initial stages of just like coming up with the plot, just working through those problems of.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual ideation stage. There's like the stage where you have ideas. There's the stage where the ideas are formulated, and there's this little short middle stage where everything just clicks and comes together. Where it's like, oh, that's the perfect idea to tie into this idea, and oh, that's how you solve this, creative problem with this character's conflict, or whatever you have. That
takes some mental gymnastics.
Yeah, yeah, it's exhausting. Actually, we'll spend several days just either on the phone or hanging out, like just going through it, being like, well, why would she be motivated by this, or why is this happening, or how do we make this scarier or this funnier? And
truth be told, I mean, we're in the middle of that Dungeoneer Adventures book 3.
Yeah, that's right, everybody. We're in the middle of that with Dungeoneer Adventures book 3. But it's definitely the most fun I have in the whole process. Not that the rest of the process isn't fun, but seeing it all come together is great. What kind of inspiration did we have for Dungeoneer Adventures, Ben?
Well, so this is like a brand new thing for us, doing a middle grade chapter book, and we kind of look to The Last Kids on Earth as inspiration.
Yeah, that was inspiring,
especially just visually, the way that, as we were talking about, everything flows on the page, and it's not like a storybook where it's kind of a floating image that you can read at your own leisure. It's like baked into the story.
Right.
So we wanted to capture that. In
a way, it's like a super interactive, like critical to the story, because the images and the comics and even the little pieces of spot art that identify cute or fun details are all really important to the story.
And then if we really want to like go deep into our histories, I think just Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the dynamic between the characters. Playing Dungeons and Dragons together. Yeah, exactly. All that. I mean, it's hard to get away from that stuff. It's like deep in our bones.
Right. We grew up on that stuff.
Do you have any other input on that?
I'd say, the Saturday morning cartoons, I think, really hit it on the head for me. But I'm always sort of inspired by high fantasy and the Lord of the Rings, and like trying to adopt those kinds of elements to different types of heroes. And so like Coop and company are totally different kinds of heroes. They're misfits for sure, but they are in a world that's very, very different from our own, and at the same time very similar to our own. And I think that weaving in elements from both, like if you take like the Lord of the Rings and the Muppets and mix it together, that's like exactly the kind of thing that I love. And so
that's our aesthetic. Yeah,
that's our aesthetic. That's our soul. so like we're always chasing, is this the Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets? Is this Fozzie Bear tossing a magical ring into a volcano? And what would that be like? Would it have some drama and be kind of funny? Yes. Yes, it would.
Matthew Berger says there was nothing more exciting than Saturday morning cartoons. That is true.
That's true.
Just wake up at 7 a.m., get a bowl of cereal. You're good to go for like the next 4 hours.
four straight hours. Great. Well, should we answer some questions? I see we got a bunch of questions coming in here. We should probably grab some of these.
Yeah, and if anyone has more questions, feel free to add them to the list.
So Dave McLean says, my son noticed that the map of the Dungeoneer Academy says level 1. Will Green Team be on level 2 in the next book?
Yeah, I think we plan on doing a level 2 map, just kind of expanding the school grounds. I don't know if we're going to do that for every single book. because that might just get out of hand. But
there's also lots we haven't explored on the map in the first place. Characters don't go everywhere. There's so many places that exist in the world now that are introduced that we just don't dig into yet. But I could say it's safe to say that there will be more levels to be explored in the future.
Yeah.
Why middle grade? What do you most love about writing for that audience?
So we wrote Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo, which was categorized as YA, and there was some confusion around it because my style is a little cartoony, and people thought it was supposed to be for younger kids, and so we thought, why not just try something at that level? And James and I mean,
it's sort of a natural for us.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
it's like sort of our natural voice.
We found that we could write in that voice pretty easily and match each other's styles.
It's also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to write in that voice. And like Ben said, like Rickety Stitch it's YA. It's about a skeleton bard who goes on an epic quest to discover who he was when he was alive, because he's living with amnesia. And so on the surface, that doesn't exactly sound very middle grade, even though the book is, fun for that age group. But it's and it also takes place in the Land of Eem, which is fun. But
yeah, that's another thing. We wanted to build out the Land of Eem, our fantasy world, and like have it encompass different age levels, and middle grade seemed like the next step.
Right. Ooh, this is a great question, Ben. What is your favorite illustration in the book? Oh, it's tough for me. I have several, but I think I have one that I can name.
I don't want to spoil.
I know. I don't. I don't want to. I don't want to spoil anything either. Maybe I can. I'll give it a shot. I'll partially answer this. There is an image where the green team is in big trouble and they plunge into some water. And Ben did this beautiful piece of the characters under threat, under the water, in a dark cave. And it just really pops off the page for me. I was stunned when Ben first showed it to me. It's like a little over halfway through the book, I think. Maybe just mid-ish.
My favorite is in the climactic scene. And I won't give away what happens, but it's a 2-page spread. And I think it just captures the spirit of the book.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do we have here? Is his name Coop for co-op? It's such a great idea. Hey, can we say yes? Yes, of course.
We didn't plan that.
We didn't plan that, but that's a great idea. Coop's name is Coop Cooperson, and he's literally the son of a cooper, which is is a crafter that makes barrels and amongst other things. And so Cooperson is named after his father, who's also named Cooper. I think I read that, but I had forgotten what his father's name was.
I don't know that it's explicitly said, but I think
it said
Dad.
It said somewhere in the notes, which I recently read.
But yeah, Coop is part of a giant family. He has 15 brothers and sisters. He is the eldest. And we just thought, honestly, Coop Cooperson was funny. It sounded good. It
had like a kind of a 80s hero vibe to it that we liked. Going back to Saturday morning cartoons, like, hey, Coop. Just felt right.
And you got Kip, Chip, Flip, Candy, Tandy, Randy, Kate, Cat, Kit, Hoop, Hilda, Mike, Mick, Mary, and Donovan. Those are all his brothers and sisters.
And Walter, their pet goat.
Yeah.
Okay, we got several more here.
What advice would you give
go
to
ahead.
someone who wants to play Dungeons and Dragons for the first time? That is a good question.
That is a really good question. Shoot.
I would
Ben.
start with a starter set if you wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. James and I are actually creating a role-playing game.
You should start by checking out the Land of Eem tabletop role-playing game. No. Yeah, but Ben and I are really passionate about tabletop role-playing games. So for the past several years, we've been, on the side writing our own game, writing our own core rule book, our own bestiary, a huge sandbox setting that makes it easy to game master games. And it's all set in the Land of Eem with the caveat that the game is focused on collaborative storytelling, creative solutions, teamwork. There is fighting in it, but it's not the main element. It's just, it's all about trying to come up with creative solutions to get out of trouble. And
there's very little number crunching. It's like more intuitive, we think, and it's more centered around being creative and exploring and that type of stuff. The stuff that we find most fun when we're playing.
I mean, find out what elements a kid is most interested in when it comes to the role-playing games, and then you can take those elements out of Dungeons and Dragons or any game and turn it into something that really enjoy. I think the social aspect of tabletop role-playing games is such a powerful tool. I mean, we get contacted all the time from educators that use it as a tool to help kids learn how to communicate effectively, how to solve conflicts together and with each other and for each other. And I think that's a strong tool to use growing up. It definitely made a big impact on Ben and I.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because we didn't have anyone really teaching us like an adult. We just found it on our own with our friends.
Yeah,
taught each other. So
as people did back in the day, it wasn't like super popular like it is today. So, different world. Let's see. Which class would you be most excited to take, and why? Ooh, that's a good one. What class would you want to take at Dungeoneer Academy, Ben?
Alchemy would be pretty cool.
That is a good one.
That's coming up in Dungeoneer Adventures Book 2. Spoiler.
I mean, Dungeoneering 101 would be great because you could really learn the ropes, It's like, here are the skills you need to start out as a Dungeoneer. I think part of me would also want to take Sword and Sorcery class because deep down inside, I love the old Sword and Sorcery, your Conan, your Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I love that.
It's not really about how to wield magic. It's just how to fight wizards.
That's funny. Yes, but it is true. What big books did you love growing up, and did you take inspiration? And did you take inspiration from your own childhood favorites?
Yeah, I mean, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are obvious ones that really impacted us both.
Yeah.
Something that I really liked as a kid was the Phantom Tollbooth, and it's just
that's great.
Weird, droll humor. Humor is always something we're trying to include even in tense moments. Right. It's always nice to have a little bit of
levity, something to cut the tension just a little bit and to remind everybody that we're like these characters. I've been inspired my whole career, and Ben is the same way, by Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo. I think that more than anything, other than yeah, right. It's like all of the things that we love are just surrounding us at all times. But Usagi is wonderful because I think it, more than any other thing, really taught me pacing. like the pace of a good story. And like comics in general, for the actual dialogue, don't have a lot of real estate. It's like you've got like there's a level of like snappy brevity and tight language for specifically like conversation that that I find really inspiring from comics and graphic novels. And Usagi Yojimbo is definitely my favorite. It's my number one in terms of, you know, just overall inspirations.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, Ben and I both, we just grew up on it and we love it. And it's one of the things that brought us close together. Let me see what else we got. Was it hard writing about characters that are primarily not human? Good question.
I actually really enjoy writing non-human characters.
Yeah, so do I.
Actually, I don't think, like, the main characters, I feel like we treat mainly as if they're human, like they're people. There's nothing monstrous about them.
Maybe their diets. But yeah, treating them as people, that's something Ben and I talk about a lot. In fact, that's in the Land of Eem, everything is a person is the kind of approach that Ben and I take. Sure, there is like bad people and good people, but everything you can talk to. It's like every creature you meet practically is a person and has their own personality. And so a great way, so in a way they're all sort of how we would think of a human being as opposed to being.
It was really fun writing this character here, Timbo.
Yeah.
Who is he's a mushroom. They're sort of like sort of an alien species. That's kind of how we treated them, and they speak kind of like Yoda in a backward syntax. And
they're the most different because they're not like an animal. It's a vegetation. it's a fungus as opposed to being a traditional reptile or amphibian or mammal. So I agree. That was super fun to write the mushroom characters.
He's like a very literal person, takes everything you say literally.
Yeah. No nuance. No nuance. Metaphors are lost upon them. Let's see. What kind of research did you have to do for this series? Was there anything you researched that didn't make it into the book, but you wanted to include? It's another great question.
Matthew says, must be the life of the party because they're all fungi.
That's just the kind of humor we like.
Research. I guess we didn't really research. This is all, fantasy world. It's kind of like researching our own notes.
Actually, there's you laugh, but there's some truth to that because we had already created this Land of Eem, which was a huge leap forward for us because then we've got this big sandbox to play in where there's these different types of folk and different creatures and different locations and physics and just like world truths that we could pull from. And that the process of inspiring Land of Eem has taken place over like almost 2 decades of us creating things, mapping out towns and people and conflicts that we used first for the Rickety Stitch series, and then again for Dungeoneer Adventures, and then actually got super fleshed out for the game that we've been working on for the past couple of years. And so in many ways, we've been playing in the same place for a long time, to the point where it's become so familiar with us that, aside from forgetting some of the rules, that we've got to go back and be like, oh, I forgot that happened, or that there's that person, or what if we had this character pop up, or this conflict interwoven into this book. It's this big world that we can pull from anytime we need to now.
I will say that visually, there's research that has to be done in terms
Yeah.
of visual reference. That's unavoidable just to draw anything these days. I don't know how people did it back in the day without Google and Pinterest. Like all the different mushrooms, definitely was researching what mushrooms looked like. Even down to just visual reference for a bunk bed. Simple stuff like that. That's maybe something you wouldn't think I would have to do, but using reference as an artist is always a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think that's all of the questions. I think we did it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Does anybody have?
Yeah. Any last questions while you got us? We love hanging out with y'all.
Well, I would love to know more about like what it was like to work across, like within the same world but in these different genres. I mean, you just mentioned it. I was going to ask right as you started talking about it, but like, where did that even start? Where did the Land of Eem start? If it started 2 decades ago, was it the game?
It definitely started with
grow?
Rickety Stitch. I'd say it started with Rickety
Stitch.
Stitch, and Rickety Stitch has in it a primary storyline of conflict that exists in the world that's woven into his own personal story of his amnesia and trying to discover his origins. And then we had the world got so big just on paper, like in our Google Drive, essentially, that we thought, like, gosh, there's a lot of stories that could be taking place and a lot of conflicts and a lot of fun that could be had with it. And, going back to the whole Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets vibe, we thought, well, if we really like books like Bone from Jeff Smith are fantastic at bridging comedy with drama. It's like, you've got these cousins that are together and they're hilarious and they're doing their thing, but also there's this dark lord trying to devour the world. And so like we love that kind of tonal shift, and thought, okay, we could totally do that with the Land of Eem, and we really want to because it's kind of perfect for it. And it just naturally came to be.
And we regularly like have ideas for other stories, and I think we're just both inclined to do fantasy stories, and just why not keep it in the same world that we've created together, just because by now there's like a huge history that we've written. I mean, it's people haven't experienced it at all yet. Like there's only been Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo and now this first book, but we have this whole backlog of stuff that we're kind of drawing from.
Do you think you'll be using that backlog in the future installments in the series? Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot.
100%.
Definitely, yeah.
100%.
Well, what is next for you both? You're working on number 3 right now.
Yep.
Also number 2.
Also number 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Working on 2 and 3.
And
what is it like to be working on both of those at the same time? I mean, they're at different points in the writing process, but
yeah, they're different points.
Series,
Book 2 is written, but okay. Ben is about to embark on a great crusade to do the art.
Yeah. So that kind of makes it possible to start doing the writing side of book 3, but we're still in the plotting stage, kind of getting everything sorted out.
Yeah, and I will say that I find it beneficial to start plotting 3 right at the end of book 2 being written, because it's like a lot of themes are super fresh, and there's definitely stories that carry over from each of the books, and it's just like, I think it's just like functionally easier to keep your head wrapped around it and get started right away as opposed to waiting.
Nice.
Then aside from that, we're working on our game, which is also a huge undertaking of
right.
Like, it's actually 3 books, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's we've partnered with an independent tabletop role-playing game company called Exalted Funeral. They're going to be working with us on releasing a pretty exciting crowdsourcing campaign for the game very soon, just within a few weeks, actually.
Oh, wow. And you said the game you've been working on maybe the longest?
Not the longest.
Not the longest, but
or close.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love for several years on the side.
Yeah, I think that's also though, like you mentioned, using it as a teaching strategy. That's such like a useful and fun context for
we
like
hear it all the
learning
time.
No, it makes complete sense. We did have a question come in from Ronnie. What advice would you offer aspiring comics writers and artists?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think start small. Make an 8-page comic, maybe submit it to a zine or something, or make a mini comic. And that's how we started out, just going to comic conventions, like the smaller ones, getting a table and selling your little stapled comics. And that's a really great way to get your stuff out there. I think it's important to actually make something and not kind of like wait around for something to happen or sit on a script or something. You just put yourself out there, put something together, even as, like I said, just 8 pages. And maybe after that's done, you make something that's 16 pages or.
It's exactly what we did. It's exactly, we started a really, really small, tabling our own stuff, doing bigger stuff. Then Ben did a web comic, and then we did the same thing for Rickety Stitch. We actually had most of the first book was a web comic before it was picked up by Knopf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's always
chipping away.
To read.
Yeah, reading.
Yes, reading is so always important for writing, and practice, just like anything else, right?
Right.
Smaller and getting bigger. Where can we find both of you? Like on the interwebs?
Yeah.
At this point, we're really just sharing accounts or like social media.
Yeah, anywhere on social media at Rickety Stitch, and then you can check out our website, landofeem.com. And we've got a newsletter there that folks can sign up for, and of course get all the news of what we're working on, and lots of stuff on Dungeoneer Adventures, Rickety Stitch, and the game.
Like we said, the game, it's literally just like a week and a half. We're gonna like announce something, and you'll be
big announcement.
Do things.
So you heard it here first.
Yeah, so definitely check those out. Get that newsletter because you can get to the game. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of exciting stuff coming out. The book sounds like so much fun. I know so many people at the store are going to love it. We have a huge kind of Dungeons and Dragons contingency that I'm sure this will work.
Awesome.
It sounds right up that alley.
That's great.
So thank you all so much for doing this event with us. And thank you to everybody in the audience for joining us on this Saturday afternoon and taking the time out of your day. And of course, thank you to Ben and James. Again, thank you. Congratulations on the release of the book.
Yeah.
Excited to see what comes next for like our team of adventurers, and good luck with books 2 and 3 and the game. That's probably going to be maybe the most immediate, super exciting thing that comes, it sounds like. But yeah, thank you. And with that, I will not so gracefully kind of close us out for the afternoon.
No worries. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate everybody joining us today.
Thank you to everyone. Remember, if you would like to buy your copy of the book, you get book plates, and you can do that right below. You just hit that button and that'll take you right to Mysterious Galaxy and the page. And you can see what happens to Coop and the rest of the crew. So we will see you all again.
All right, take it easy, everybody.
Hopefully. Bye.
Bye.